Osio, Doichu, Dawado Punokhali, and another Honigis Gitulagi, Haniamia. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone. This is Chief Eagle Spirit, aka Lamia Khalifa, coming at you again live with truth and news of current and possible future events. I'm moved again today by the Spirit with regards to, and the title of this show is Leadership of an Ass. Excuse my language, but I have to call it as I see it. You know, when you think about an ass, those of us who are in the country, you might have a farm, and you might have one on your farm known as a donkey. You know, they usually refer to such animals as, you know, dumb, you know, without much intelligence. They have some, but they're extremely limited. And when you think about the thinking of the animal, you know, you just like a dog. I'm gonna give you an example. You take a bone, and if you throw the bone far enough and it goes off of an edge or a cliff, the dog wouldn't think twice about jumping off the cliff if it didn't take the time out in his exceeding anticipation to get and retrieve the stick or the bone or whatever it was that he wanted to get. And of course, you'll see him galloping and his tail behind him. So, in other words, what I'm alluding to here is, Osio Doichu, how are you, brothers and sisters, and those who are on my my live show here? I wish all my brothers and sisters peace and blessings, and I'm thankful for your attendance. I have to speak to the leadership that we currently have. I want people to understand that when someone leads you, they represent you, and is spread far and wide. So people are really looking at the people that your representative is supposed to reflect. If we're from America, we have an American president. We're Americans. We're from Russia. We have a Russian president. We're Russians. So people reflect, and the sad thing about it is that there is always either factions or divides or parts of that whole that some people will agree with their representative and some people will not. Sadly enough, is that when the governments want to start conflicts and wars, and the things that are being represented in terms of the verbatim, and how your leaders represent you is reflected upon the people itself. When you think about, I'm gonna go back to World War II, and something that I just learned really with Germany was that a lot of the American soldiers and maybe even some Russian soldiers, when they went to Germany, of course the perception was that not just the soldiers were the enemy, the German people. And, you know, of course there was resistance even within Germany against Hitler. But how do you make a distinction when you're at war between those who are friendly and those who aren't? The reason why I bring this up is because we're headed in that direction somewhat the same to this very day. And when you look at what Trump is doing, he is like the head of that donkey, and the tail represents the people to a degree. And I'm not talking about the whole of the American population. I'm talking about those who follow him. But here's the problem. because ignorance doesn't just live in one hemisphere. It it's almost global to a degree. So of course there are people now looking at the United States, the American people, as idiots, and that we are all complicit in what Trump is doing. Look at what's going on in Mexico. From what I'm hearing now, they are talking about they don't want any Americans there. You know, not the good Americans who don't support Trump. They don't want any Americans in their country. Now, I don't know how true that is, but this is what's on social media and some other platforms. I did see some videos showing there was some violence out there. They were talking about gringos go home. You know, and that's a general statement. Gringo, what does that mean? That's for Westerner, American, get out of my country. That's why I tell people who are leaving, I'm not going nowhere. I'm staying right here. This is my home. If I have to fight it, I'm gonna fight it. But the deal is that we are like the tail on that donkey, flopping in the wind as the donkey is going off the cliff. And the point is that the head, you know, the tail usually doesn't go as long as what? If it flaps back on the back of the donkey, is half the body, so you can't reach the head. So what am I saying here? What has Trump done? He's got the military. He's got law enforcement. What do you think he spent $1 billion for law enforcement? That wasn't by chance. That's to protect him. From who? The people who are in that split. The other side who don't support what he's doing. Because they're not stupid. They know that at one point or sometime people are going to get violent. And you're starting to see it in the street. And down in California, I think, where ICE was on a farm. It might have been a marijuana farm, I'm not sure. And they were rounding up people. They showed one, I don't know if he was Mexican, but one Hispanic looking guy. He was tired. He pulled out his weapon and started firing. You think that they don't anticipate this? They're stupid, but they're not stupid in that regards. When it comes to violence, they're anticipating violence, and in fact, I believe that they want it so they can implement martial law. And sadly enough, that type of thinking is not something new. It's very old, and as those who do not learn from history are condemned to repeat it. Now, will the people rise up? Will more of the people rise up against this wicked regime, as we refer to them as? Because that's what they are, a wicked regime. But the people are fearful. We are hearing, rise up, but let's be nonviolent. I don't know. You know, that's a difficult one, because how can you be nonviolent when someone is being violent towards you? Doesn't make any sense. The human spirit does not allow for maybe a handful of people, where we have to, do this peaceably. I always said this, right? If you really wanted to be nonviolent against a violent system, all people have to do is don't go to work. Don't go to work. And I'm talking about the masses of people. Just shut down a few cities and watch what happens. Because that's one thing they respect is money, power, money and power. And they want to see how far that they can push this thing, because the people are not fighting back as they should. Now, I'm not advocating violence. All I'm saying is that the scripture says, do unto your brother as you'd have him do unto you. You kill my cat, you better watch your dog. This is the balance that we have to have to deal with a system that is being recycled. Just speaking to someone earlier about this. This is a recycled system. That's all it is. This is nothing new. For those who are in the know, those who research and study, this is recent history. Jim Crow. They're talking about just picking up ordinary citizens off the streets. And in fact, from what I'm hearing, that's exactly what they're doing. That's violent. That is absolute violence at its core. So we must really rethink our position in response to the current situation on the ground. They're openly talking about, and not talking about, but going after brown people, if you will. And we know that they're attacking black people, the Haitian community. I mean, those are black people. Come on, I know plenty of Haitians. And sometimes you can't differentiate them from black Americans or any other black ethnic group, West Indians, Africans, or whatever the case may be. Is so what's really at play here? Now, I'm going to tell you like it is, right? That this whole deportation project is really about the conscious community. And people who are in the conscious community know and understand this. What does that mean in its entirety? Well, the truth about America, about the Western world, the truth about Masonry, the truth about Freemasonry, the truth about how these empires were propped up, how they became wealthy off of slavery and deception. They don't want these truths that are here now. And it's all over social media. It's all over social media. And they know for a fact that black and brown people, black and brown people are connected with regards to, see, once you tell a lie, that means there must be a truth there that you have to find to offset that which those who have tried to deceive you, and then you blow up and expose the lie for what it is. And then when those who what has been hidden or kept in the dark, so here now there is the talk, and it has been for quite some time, that has been gaining more and more momentum. Reparations, restitution, however you want to view how that should be implemented. Reparations and restitution means like a variety of different things, whether it's economic, whether it's cultural. That's like the oh my God, I don't want to get this wrong now. The Apache with Gayote, Geronimo's great grandson. He wants restitution in terms of the bones of Geronimo being returned to their people. So you talk about restitution, it has to be looked at in so many different ways. Yeah, they have his bones, the secret societies. They have his bones locked up, in their secret organizations. And I hear it might be is it Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken. So restitution could be, financial. It could be educational. It could be dealing with real estate, a host of different ways. But this is something they don't want to do. They fear that any type of restitution to help those that they have destroyed for the past 300 to 400 to 500 years, they don't want to see us move forward. And our momentum, even without the help of restitution, black and brown people still survive under the weight of colonialism, slavery, deception, miseducation, all the like. And we have to understand that they don't want to spend a dollar to help us, but yet they'll say, they have to cut us off from what? The crumbs that fall off their table, Medicaid, welfare, stuff to keep people in a perpetual state of asking, can I please, sir, can you give me, and and to actually really get into the core of that, some of these things are good in a way that it would force our people to turn towards each other, to work together, and be responsible for one another. Because believe it or not, at one time we were self-sustained and independent. So my people, black and brown people, at once we had no choice. We didn't have no government. We didn't have no services, being rendered by social workers and social organizations. We didn't have none of that. We had to depend on our families and our communities to help. So God now is going to show us a way that if we don't do this again for each other, because the government, and especially this government, they don't want to give us anything. And if the bottom line is that, do they owe? Yes, they do. Will they pay? No. More than likely, they won't. And as it says in the book of Exodus, that Pharaoh was wicked and evil towards his slaves. So people will say, hey, what are you talking about? I'm not a slave. I'm talking about the minimum wage that we pay. I talk about the health care that we get for the jobs that we do. Slavery is, people always seem to think that slavery is just forced labor. Even if you working for a job that pays you, a way, it's not a living wage. And then the health care is barely sufficient, or if none at all. And then, you're not forced into these jobs, you go work yourselves. So that means that if you have not the mind or the capacity to create independent thought, and what I mean is to create businesses for you, you're still a slave. You're still a slave. So those people who will tell me, oh, I'm not no slave, you working for somebody else and you barely getting by, and you don't see any way out of that through your own vices mentally, you're still a slave. That means your mind is programmed to think, to follow, and to look for work from someone else, and especially for those who do not like you or those who will hurt you, even though you think that you might be benefiting to some degree because you have a job, but at the same time you're still struggling, week to week, month to month, year to year, just to stay alive, stay afloat, just to feed your families. And then God forbid you get sick. Healthcare costs, coverage, none of that. Everything revolves around a system. It's not broken. It was designed this way for our people to slide for the past 50 to 100 years. We've taken maybe 2 steps forward to only take 3-4 steps back. Look what Trump is doing. I don't agree with everything that they're doing, no, because this deportation thing, you got nerve to deport people when you are a foreigner yourself. But he's a thug. He's a thug. His whole administration, they're number thugs. They feel as though we conquered this country. That's their whole mind. We conquered this country, but they don't believe that there's a God above their heads. So that's why you look at what happened to Texas and what's coming, because that's nothing compared to what's coming. I've been talking about this for years, and people who don't believe, they think, oh, God is something that, if he's a God, why didn't he show up sooner? It's always a time. You don't question the Most High who created the heavens and the earth. He does things in his time, not yours. So the Texas thing that took place, the floods, feel for those people out there, but everyone has his day in court. God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, God the like. So now our time is due now, because Pharaoh was sitting back saying, I don't believe in God, and I'm a king now. He's saying that in his mind. He ain't telling the people this, but look at his actions. He thinks he's a king, and he could do what he wants. Just listen to what he's saying. I can deport Rosie O'Donnell. Think about that. And she's a white woman. Think about that. So he is actually illustrating that I'm going to do what I want. So we have no more presidents. We have an oligarch king. And our people should be alarmed, but at the same time prepared for whatever. Because I remember my mother taught me when I was younger, well, excuse me, not my mother, my sister. My mother was an old Christian who didn't go to church. But sister said, anybody touch you, if they put their hands on you, punch them in the face. You don't let nobody just put their hands on you and you don't respond. And here we are today. We getting kicked, beaten, punched, and I keep hearing, nonviolence, don't get up there and, get violent. That's what they want. Yeah, that's exactly what they want, because he got the military. It's a hard pill to swallow. But I know most people out there are saying, if they put their hands on me, it's going to be fisticuffs. I'm not going to let them just put their hands. Most people are going to fight. You see what that, like I say, I'll reiterate, the Haitians. You see what the Haitians did? Yo, they was out there brawling with ICE. Everybody's saying, yo, how come we didn't do that? See, common sense ain't so common to everybody. Some people have to be shown. And that is just apparent. It's sad though. It's sad, but we are going to be at some point in time, we're going to be faced with a decision. Now, I've already chosen my path. I know what I have to do. They touch me in minds. My family talking about, you want to deport me? No, you're going to have to kill me right here. No, I'm not going nowhere. I'm not going nowhere. So, especially my own country at that, my native, I got over almost 1,000 years of history in my family here. In so-called North America, which I know is Guatemala, Turtle Island. Come on. Black Indian, North and South Carolina. Ain't nobody taking my identity from me. Nobody. And I'm going to fight. I'm going to be like Osceola, Usayaholo, Gayote, Geronimo. You understand what I'm saying? Tecumte, Tecumseh. Yeah, Malcolm. All that. I'm not nobody. You're going to have to take me off this earth physically, because I'm not going nowhere. I ain't going nowhere. I'll stand my ground. So, again, and when you look at the reference that I was referring to, again, with the ass, the donkey. You look at Congress, our leaders, people that we vote for, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, sometimes almost two sides of the same coin. You can't tell what's the difference in so many aspects. Have the Democrats done good? Yeah, depends on what you want to call good, because when you look at the political nature of what they are charged with doing, they give us some concessions, but it comes with, what do you call, stipulations. And those stipulations are, we'll give you, health care, but you have to pay a portion. We'll give you support for food, but you can only buy this. You can't buy that. In other words, inorganic, but you can't get organic. In other words, unhealthier food. And that reminds me of the WIC program, which I remember at one point, when I lost my business and my baby was born, I had to go through that. And I noticed that the food that they were throwing at us was unhealthy. And I did not, buy into that. As a matter of fact, I got me another business started really, really quick, and I was able to buy my food and get off of that. But my whole thing is, hold on a second, people. Big L, I'm doing a live video. I'll see you in a minute. I did 15 runs around already. Yes, sir. Yeah. Excuse me, people. And I got off of that really quick, because I noticed, and this, I'm talking about the Democrats, because they push us into these vices in terms of what we get as a result of putting them in positions of power to, represent us. And some is good. I'm not going to disparage them entirely, but the greater good now, the greater good. When it comes to jobs, what about training programs stripped from us? I don't know how many of you guys are, in your late 40s or 50s, early enough to remember where they had a lot of programs set up. Whereas that when you went to high school, they had trades in the high schools, even in the junior highs. When I was growing up, that they stripped them. They started to take them out. The late 70s and early 80s, they started pulling them out of the schools. Why? Especially in the black and brown communities. Why did they do this? And now you have brothers and sisters coming out of high school, and there's no jobs. Or if there is Burger King, McDonald's, you got a high school diploma, and what kind of work do you have now? You're flipping burgers. Okay, now you go to college. You go to college, you come out with a degree in psychology. There's no jobs. So the trades, I want y'all to hear me on this one. The trade schools, they made sure they got rid of that because they know in practicality that the trades that you came out with, you could immediately start a business. They knew this. So they said, we got to get these trades out of here. And they did that. So what have the Democrats really done for our people? But to push us into a corner of helplessness and servitude. And this is why Jesus said the blind led the blind. So that's what I'm talking about, the ass, the leadership, the head of a donkey, the jawbone of a donkey, and the tail that flaps in the back looking, barely seeing what's going on in the front. And here we are today. So we don't teach our children independence. We don't teach our children independence. Most of us, we teach go to school, get a job. We got to cut that out. This is what they are really afraid of. They want us to be under their feet. They want us to be under their feet, but they're scared of the conscious community. Those that see, that's why they killed our brother Jesus 2,000 years ago. They murdered him. Because he saw what the government was doing. I see exactly what he saw then 2,000 years ago. I see it. And here we are today, again, faced with the same BS, basically. So now God said that we're going to have to go through suffering before we come out of Egypt, America. And when I say that, it's not a physical exodus. Hear me, people. It's a mental and spiritual exodus. We must come out of her norms, her mores, her ways, her ideals. We have to come out of the thinking of dependency. We must become independent in our thinking and be creative. That's why I'm a black Indian. Look, I'm not from the res, and I'm not disrespecting my brothers and sisters from the reservation, but this whole country is a reservation for us, and it always has been ever since this man stepped on our soil and managed to do what he had done to us, to the darker peoples, black and brown, red and yellow. He makes no distinction. That's why you see the Spanish community, they shocked. Cubans, they shocked. Oh, they can't believe Trump is deporting these people. I mean, you think he doesn't know that a lot of you are mixed? Some of you are mixed with indigenous peoples and black people, especially the dark brown-eyed ones and the ones who are high yellow, but they get a little tan in the sun. He doesn't want you amongst himself. He figures that you are going to taint his genetic pool, which is ridiculous. But this is the mentality of these people who are what we call the 10%, the rich slave makers of the poor. Lawyers, doctors, political figures, president, etc. All of these people, the Freemasons, and they are hell-bent on freeing themselves. You see, like Mark Rubio, they're using these people. They are using them for their ends. If you take a good look at some of the people that are behind Trump, that are supporting him. They blonde hair, blue eyes. You remember Hitler tried that. He was looking for the master race, and he had dark hair and dark brown eyes. That's what I'm saying. You think about the ridiculousness that goes on in these people's brains. It's unbelievable. But when you look at it, you'll see it, that they are that stupid. And they think that blonding and blue-eyed people, that they are going to govern because they're superior. And if they're superior, this is what they really think behind closed doors. And sooner or later, it's going to slip. Like these people we're listening to, Trump and all of these other followers, like what's her name, Noam, what's his name, Tom Homan, who reminds me of Bull Connor from back in the '60s with the civil rights movement. You know, you look at Stephen Miller. You look at these people, and you could just see the evil that is pouring, out from them, but you hear it in their voice and what they're saying now. The racism is almost blatant now, which the scripture says was going to happen when God said he was going to take out the wise kings out of Egypt. And now we have a bunch of half-witted, half-minded imbeciles, but they're evil. So they don't have to be smart. They just know how to speak the language to their base. And now even those that supported them, you see Trump turning on his base because he knows how dumb, how stupid that they were and are. It just befuddles the mind. I think about that video they caught with Trump speaking about the Republican base. This was back in the 90s. And so many people missed it. They never saw it. He was talking about he said, the host that was on the show asked him, and I might have been Donahue, I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but he asked him, he said, would you ever run for president? And he said, hey, I don't think so, but and then he said, which party? He said, maybe the Republicans, because, they're the easiest people to fool. Or their bases, they're not that smart. This Trump said this in the 90s. He actually said it's on, go look it up, it's on YouTube. But I remember it when I was younger. I remember it. So there's no excuse for these people who say, oh, they're sorry, they can't believe Trump is doing this. No, you're sorry because it's affecting you now. You're not sorry because it's hurting the darker peoples. It's affecting you. And now you want to make an excuse. Oh, can you forgive us now and this and that? No, because if it was just black and brown people that he was attacking, and I'm not talking about physically, I'm talking about with the withdrawal of Medicaid, what do you call it? SSI checks, and a lot of the things that he is pulling back and away from people like veterans, the poor and working middle class of white people in this country who are being hurt. Same ones, a lot of them who supported Trump. Yeah, he's going to get rid of all of the criminals who were Hispanic, as though there were no white European criminals here in America. But of course, they always look outward and see everybody else of color who's a criminal. They never look at themselves and say, well, you know what? We're the majority in the United States. White people are the majority, and that's a fact. They always call these, right? Okay, fine. So if you're the majority, and then when you look at the crimes being committed throughout the United States, their numbers exceed people of color. So who are you really looking for? What is your purpose? And I'm gonna emphasize this again. They coming after the conscious community, and Pharaoh, and I'll reiterate this again. Pharaoh said, after his advisors came to him and said, the numbers of the slaves are increasing. We had better deal with them and deal with them wisely before they deal with us because of what we've done to them. So hear me on that, my people. Hear me on that. So he has to make it look as though he's going after the brown Hispanics. He has to make it look as, that's why I tell my FBAs and my LOs, American descendants of slaves, do some more damn research, because throughout history, this man has always come after the darker peoples, period. How do you think he stole this country to begin with? You think he ain't coming after black people? So his whole purpose is to deceive. He's playing chess. Well, some of you motherfuckers is playing checkers. And I see straight through his bullshit. I'm talking about Trump and company. I see straight through all of the crap that they putting out there. And some of my people can't see. Y'all can't see what's going on? See, it tells us that those who don't learn from history are condemned to repeat it. So those of us who've read maybe 1 or 2 books think we know everything. And I've seen this online. I'm going to tell you, I've been studying history since I was 7 years old. I'm 58. You do the math. I'm not saying I know everything, but I'm going to tell you right now, I ain't no fool. Especially for a slave master who's still playing some of his slaves. I'm a free black Indian. Mentally, spiritually, and culturally. So when I leave this earth, I will leave with the knowledge and the mind of a free black Indian. I'm never going to disrespect my fathers and my grandfathers who are black people. We call ourselves black today because a lot of us have lost the history of who we are, from where we were kidnapped from. A lot of us don't know. So there's nothing wrong with the identification of being black. For me, it's a prideful thing. White folks, they use the word white to pride themselves, to unite themselves. But I get a lot of hate sometimes because people say, oh, you know, you're black. How can you be black? You know, that was something. Well, guess what? And remember this. Times do change. Nothing stays the same forever. Only righteous deeds against wickedness. So if I call you black, you call yourself brown, or you call yourself by another name, I'm not going to disrespect you. I say, how you doing, my brother? How you doing, sister? I'm going to respect you regardless of what classification. But some of us, you're not dissing. How dare you? How dare you? That's where the disrespect comes in. God said, get to know your brother. So that means that you might have different understandings and different perceptions. But get to know your brother and your sister because of those differences so you can learn. Be humble and respectful. Humility is a word lacking in our vocabulary. Humility. We don't, amongst our own. And this is how, and listen, this is how we're played. This man knows when you're arguing and fighting over foolishness. So that's how he can come amongst you when you're arguing and debating, especially out in the open. And when you have conflict and division, he'll come right up in the middle of your conflicts and division, and he'll manipulate you and destroy you. They did the same thing with Malcolm X. They did the same thing with Geronimo. They did the same thing with Tecumseh. And many of our historical figures, they made sure that when we had strife, how be it as small as it was, they managed to manipulate it and blow it up into something that it was not. But in that process, they destroyed whole peoples and whole communities because guess what? We weren't smart enough to see that we were being played. So on that note, I want to thank my brother. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam, brother. I look white, brother. Yeah, I remember you, brother Anthony. I didn't forget you, brother. I did not forget you. My day is good. Kasim, my day is good. How was yours, brother? Just, you know, trying to get through, just like every one of my brothers and sisters out here, trying to live life, and always in preparation, you know, for the worst. Pray for the best of things, and hopefully that things will not go the way of the prophets. The prophets have forewarned of these days that we are currently in. Always good to see you too, brother. I'm glad you're still around. Glad you're still around. What time is it? I'm at work right now, but I have like a 6.5 hour lunch break every day, and I'm getting ready to go back to work in about 5 more minutes. So I'd like to again thank my listening audience, and each one teach one. We have to learn from one another, and we have to learn to do better. And on that note, I will say Assalamu alaikum, Donadago Honi Anigido, peace and blessings, Shalom. I love you, my brothers and sisters. You just caught the last 10 minutes? All right, well, it's going to be under leadership of an ASS titled on YouTube. Yeah. Okay. Amen. Amen. Oh, wow. Who is this? Patumba. Ever. All right. You're my brother. I don't care what color you are, brother Anthony. You're my brother. And no to that question. No. I've told you that before, brother. All right? Anyway, I got to get off this phone. I got to get back to work. And I'm out.